Welcome back to Stu's Structures. We're here to start a new build, and we're going to build another Belington building, and it was the ice and bottling plant in Belington, West Virginia, so stay tuned. So I appreciate you coming back and sharing this time with me. I am Mark Stewart, and we are going to build the Belington Ice and Bottling Company. And also there was a rolling mill as well attached to this small industry. It was one of the earliest major suppliers of electric to the downtown area in Belington, West Virginia in the late 1800s. And it was a vital industry here in town. And I don't really have a whole lot of reference to this. I have one good picture, I have one bad picture, and I have one shot from a distance which I really can't get detail out of, but I can tell a few oddities that went on the side of the building. I'm going to show you the process that I'm going to go through to figure out how to build this to scale. And I'll show you a step-by-step process, because a lot of people want to build buildings and they don't have anything more than one picture to go on to build. So this hopefully will tell you how to do that. Let's just jump into this. Now I do have a panoramic shot here. You can see the freight station on the right hand side, which we already built, and the ice company is on the left there. You see three white buildings with a lot of roofs that connect them. But you can see here when you blow it up, it just starts getting blurry, so you can't see a lot of detail. But you can get window layouts and stuff. Now I do have this picture from the back side, and you can blow it up and get a little detail, but it's not the best in the world either. But it does show you the three basic buildings. And then I do have this picture, which is really a great picture, and it's the best resource I have to go from to build this building. So I'm gonna have to go through my tools and find everything I need to figure this out. And basically, it's kind of just a form of drafting, if you will. These are the tools I use to do all this with. There's a clear 45-degree angle on the lower left-hand side. This is great for drawings, but you don't want to use it to cut against because you can damage the edge. But the metal square on the right-hand side is great for that. And the two bottom steel rules are both scale rules that have HO, O gauge, ZN, several different gauges on them, and are really what I use. The small one I like to use primarily here in a minute, and I'll show you that. And then there's a regular ruler up above there. And you can use it to scale things and go by 1/4 inch scale, 1/8 inch scale, or something like that, and figure out how your dimensions, and then work from there if you want to. And the top ruler up there is an engineer's rule, and here's just a better glimpse of that. There are 4 different scales on each of the 3 sides of these, so there's a total of 12 different scales on this. Anything from 1/32 of an inch to a 1 inch scaled, 1/2 inch scale, a 1/4 inch scale. There's just so many different ways that you can use to draw something out to scale on this. Now they won't give you the 1/87th, but you can use it against pictures and stuff to figure out a scale, and then transfer that into a hobby scale and do it that way if you want to. Now this is just a drawing I kind of threw together to give me an idea of the layout of the buildings looking at those pictures. And basically there's 3 main buildings that are a little above a 1-story level. So I'm going to call these A, B, and C, just so I can keep them separate in my drawings and everything. And this is just kind of rough and scratchy, but it tells me how they're laid out. And then as I go through and start figuring out dimensions, I'll have to play with this to make it right, but at least this gives me an idea of the layout to start from, and a direction to take. So the way I'd like to do this is that I take that small scale rule and I want to figure everything directly to 1/87th scale. So what I do is I bring that picture up on my computer and I enlarge it, and I know that most of the standard windows back in this time period were 3 foot wide. So I enlarge the picture on my screen till I can get a measurement of 1/87th scale of 3 foot wide on that window. And then I know that flat side of the building is to scale pretty much. I mean, if it's an angle, it can vary a little bit and you kind of have to play with it and guess. But then I can figure out the widths or the heights of the windows. I can figure out the spacing between the windows, the heights of the floors, the whole height of the building, the whole width of the building, and lay out an entire side of the building. And then I can do the same by going back the other sides and basically get the overall dimensions of the whole building to start with. And then I can play with it on paper and start getting, figured out so I can get materials figured out. So once I've made all my notes from, taking those measurements on the screen of the computer, I get out a sheet of paper and start transferring all of that to a drawing that helps me figure out how to lay out all the sides. And then from that I can figure out materials. But then I know the overall heights, I know the layout of everything. Now, the doors on the first floor, you couldn't really see them in the picture very well, but I know there's a double freight door. All the windows are the same throughout the entire building. There's also two regular people doors. Now on the freight side of this, and where next to the freight door, I would imagine this door probably did not have a window, because I see other doors in the building without a window. However, the door on the street side, which I really can't see in pictures either, is where a lot of people would have came into the building off the street as customers. So I would imagine that door probably would have had a window. So from that, I can count how many windows. I know what style of window it is, so I can go to a supplier and find a window that they have in that size that looks like that window and match it up and order that many windows. I know I need a double freight door and two other doors, so I can figure those out. I know the dimensions of the siding sheets that I'm going to have to make up the walls. So, I can figure out how much of that I have to order. And, then it's a matter of, 1x6 trim on a lot of stuff. You've got the wood for the deck out back, by the freight doors and stuff, and the porch out on the front. The roof, if you notice on this also, the roof, the three walls are square all the way around, but one wall is actually 4 foot shorter than the other walls, and that's on the street side, and that's the side the roof drains to. And there's actually, in one of the pictures, you can see a small structure up on the roof where they had access to the roof, like a doghouse kind of thing. And you can figure that out, and you're going to need an extra door for that as well. So next we move on to building B, and we just follow the same process. Now there's a door up here, which is what I'm going to use for scale. And I kind of have a feeling this may be a 2 foot door and not a 3 foot door. But I know the height is probably 6'8", so I use my scale rule and get the height of it and blow up the picture to where that height is the same. Then I know the picture is pretty much about to scale. So from there, I can lay it out. I know what the window is over on the other side, all the vents up on top. I know the height and the width of those and how much space there is in between them. I mean, I can look at the roof lines. I can gauge the angle of the height of the peak of the roof in the center, and the width of the building, the height of the building. And from all that, it gives me all the information that I can do the same thing and put it on paper as well. So then I just go ahead and get another piece of paper and do building B the same as I did building A. I take all those notes. I know there's no windows or doors from either of those pictures on the first story. I know there's only 2 windows and 1 door, and mainly it's, all those vent structures around the whole 3rd floor of the building. So those are going to require a whole lot of 1x6 boards to make those vents. And and then the siding. So we figure out the materials for this just the same way as we did building A, and we've got a good place to start from, and we can now build building B once we get materials in hand to do that too, and we move on to building C. Now building C is a little more tricky because we don't have a good photograph to work from. We know it's not a 2-story building, and if you take your ruler and run it across the roof line, you can see where the height of it ends up against the other building. So from that you can judge the overall height of the peak of the roof and the roof lines down below, and from that you can kind of scale the width of the building. And that has this step down on the outside of the building, then it comes down and the building ends, but the roof line at the 1-story level continues on across another enclosed area that's strictly 1 story down below. So this is an awkward area, and if you look at the picture really well, the back 2 buildings here in this picture appear to be at a slight angle to building A. And I'm not sure that I'm going to build it that way. The other picture looks like everything is square, so I'm going to continue on with that thought when I do this on this as well, and continue to do the whole overall layout as a square and no angles. The layout of the railroad behind it really was pretty much straight too, according to maps I have, and this looks kind of like they're curved. So I'm not sure how much of this is a photograph and how much of this was added in with a drawing. So this is one I'm going to have to just kind of play with on paper till I feel right about it. Now this one I am still scratching my head a little over here. I think this is pretty close to what was actually there. The roof lines, there's a whole bunch of different roof lines on this building. Between this building and building A, you can see there's a 1-story that's about maybe 10-12 foot wide front there, and the roof line from there you can tell angles up, but the angle on it is not enough to meet the roof line that's between building B and this building. So that means there must be a flat wall that crosses the same as that 1st-story wall up above between the 2 buildings. And that may have had a window or not. I would probably add one in there. But the rest of the building, I think it is laid out pretty much accurate. The one end that's street side, I could pretty well tell that it's right. There's no windows and doors. So it's just a basic building, but I think this is close enough that I can build it, and then once all those other roof lines are tied into it, it would be close enough that I could live with it and it would look good and really replicate what was there, I think. Now, even though this doesn't give real good detail on the 1st floor of the back side of that other building, I can tell there's probably a couple of freight doors, or maybe a freight door and a person door, I can't tell. And there's also at least one window in this back side of the building as well. And we have the windows for around most of the rest of the building except for this far right side. In this next picture, you can see there's 6 windows across that side of the building. So that gives us the rest of the windows and doors that we need to complete at least an order for windows and doors. The only other wall to really consider is the back side of this photo here. And to the far left, that long wall, I can tell there's at least one door. The picture's just so bad you can't get any detail out of it. It looks like there may be, a regular office people door down towards the end. There's a possibility of a window down there, but I'm not really sure if it's that or just a shadow or something. And then, there's another door up at this end which doesn't look wide enough for a freight door, but it may be a narrow type of single freight door or something. So that I'm just going to have to take into consideration and maybe add it in just for the detail because it'll look good on the building, and it's kind of questionable.
So you'll remember when I first just laid out a rough drawing to give me an idea of how things were laid out. I really didn't measure all this rough drawing out, but now I need to figure out how all those buildings really were laid out and how they all interconnected with the one-story roofs and the platforms and all that. So, to do this, I need a big sheet of paper. I don't have any big sheets that I normally have for drafting and that type of thing. So I'm just gluing these 4 sheets of paper here together to give me a surface big enough to lay all this out on. Okay, so then I just come back and lay all that out on that big sheet. Now, how did I come to this? Well, first let me explain the drawing and then I'll take you through the process that I did it. You can obviously see where all the buildings are laid out. The yellow lined areas are one-story roofs. And these are all the angles and everything that come up to meet that. The lines are in an upward down motion. Outside of the B building, you can see kind of a red hatched area. There's actually a platform up on that for cooling, a cooling area for vent pipes, all that type of thing up on the roof, and a small doghouse structure as well. The other red-lined areas around the outer perimeter of the building are all awnings over platforms. Now, the bottom left-hand corner where this A building is, I can tell by looking at this picture that, this awning did not come all the way out to the end of the building. So I'm going to have to take off a small bottom edge of this awning and reduce its width across the building. This would have been the main office where people off the street would have came into this. And you can see it is set back. I can tell from a photograph on the other end about 4 feet. So from that I can tell what's going on with the awnings. On the other side of the A building, this awning obviously comes clear out to the end of the building, looking at this picture right here. So I know exactly where that awning is, and its depth easy enough, and it wraps that corner around the one-story structure that comes out from the B building. And looking at this picture of the back of the building, I can tell that there's an awning out over the platform from building C that comes clear to the corner and then wraps clear across the back side of the building. Now I can also tell, there's an area here where I show the platform and it does not have any awning over it. And this obviously in this picture shows that. And there's a one-story building in between building A and C, and you can see where the roof lines meet clear back at the building C and B area between buildings A and B. There obviously was a wall here because this roof line would not have came up and met that other roof that's up above that. And some of this is just guesstimation as to widths of everything. Now, in laying this out, you can see here by looking at this picture of the back of the structure, building C was kind of up in the air when I drew it. And as I laid this out on paper, I added a little bit of width to the end of this building to make this work right and make the roof lines and everything look right, in accordance with what the pictures were. I'm not sure how far on the back side of this B building that this one-story structure actually stuck out, but it did a little. So I added, 4 feet back there for this structure across the back of that and the roof lines. So, that's basically it. Some of this is guesswork, but I think it's close enough and it'll replicate what was there that unless I come up with other documentations or photographs, this is about the best I'm going to be able to do to lay this out and blow up pictures and get everything to scale. But I really think it's going to be a very nice looking building, and this drawing will work to lay everything out. So there you have the process that I went through to figure this building out. I've already ordered materials, and most of them are in. There's still a couple oddities that popped up after I ordered materials that I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to do. But that's kind of the process anyway of how I do figure out these buildings. Sometimes you don't have anything more than a picture to go by, and figuring some of that out, it's not that hard. It's just time consuming. You need your scale rules, you need good tools to work with to do this. Scale rules are just invaluable. You can't do anything without them. Squares, all the other stuff goes along with that. I mean, squares, you could use a piece of paper for a square if you had to. It works. I've been there to where I didn't have all my tools with me and came up with things that work. Even a scale rule, it's hard to do without that. That's your main tool that you have to have. I mean, circle templates, triangles with different angles on them, all the other stuff is icing on the cake, and if you have it, it definitely helps. But most of it you can get away with except for the scale rule. You need one. You got to have one. In any case, thank you for coming back and sharing this time. In the next video, we're going to jump into building this structure and getting started on laying all this out. We'll start with building the 3 main structures and then laying them out on a board and putting all the one-story structures in around them and the roofs. And this is going to be quite an intense little build. There's a lot of little stuff that comes together to make the overall building in this. So this is going to be an interesting process to go through. So come back and join me, and we'll build this together and turn out another nice building for the model layout. So anyway, like and share this material, and subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and follow through the process with me. Maybe grab some materials and scratch build something as we're going through this. The whole thing is sharing of information, and if I can share something that helps you do this for your model railroad and build a building that you can't buy in kit form out there, that it's all fun. It's just all happy model railroading.